Primetime News and a special welcome to viewers on onespotmedia.com. A reminder as well that you can watch TVJ live by downloading our One Spot Media app in the Google Play Store or the App Store. That's the number 1 followed by the word Spot and Media. The opposition People's National Party (PNP) has blasted the Andrew Holness administration for how it has handled the economy so far. From dwindling growth figures to public sector wage negotiations, opposition leader Dr. Peter Phillips spoke about the issues at today's meeting of the PNP's National Executive Council in Clarendon. 5 in 4, 5% growth in 4 years by 2020. It was a major objective of the Andrew Holness administration, but last Wednesday, the Prime Minister admitted that the plan was in jeopardy and growth could be less than planned due to challenges in the economy. For opposition leader Dr. Peter Phillips,
in the past year, growth that was heralded as going to be 5 in 4, growth is down. The rate of growth is below what was there in the last period when the PNP was in office.
In 2017, tourism made a strong contribution to economic growth, but agriculture declined in all 4 quarters. Nonetheless, the PNP president made this observation about the 5 in 4 program.
5 in 4 turns out to have been a cruel joke. Don't get me wrong. I take no pleasure. We take no pleasure in the non-performance, because all of us would like to see our country grow. All of us would like to see our country prosper. But growth is down. The inflation rate, that is to say price increases, are up.
Public sector wage negotiations were also up for discussion. Before some public sector unions had meetings with the Prime Minister, they rejected the government's 6% wage increase over 2 years.
6% over 2 years was less than what we settled for in 2015 when we restarted negotiation with the workers, which can only mean that the government considers that their finances were in a worse situation than it was when we were there.
To the state of emergency out west now, Prime Minister Andrew Holness has admitted that accommodation for detained persons is not ideal, but they meet basic standards. This follows concerns from attorneys and relatives who complain that all is not well at holding facilities. The Prime Minister was speaking after a tour in St. James.
Resources and our budget would not necessarily allow us to have this quality accommodations for persons who have been detained. But the government is ensuring that we meet the basic standards. Many of the who have been detained have been processed and released. So we are not using detention as a wholesale tool of punishment. The detention is done where necessary and for strategic purposes.
Meanwhile, the opposition says it will be taking note of how citizens are being treated under the state of a public emergency.
We are against crime. We are against criminal violence. But we are also very, very aware that we will only defeat this monster if the ordinary people of Jamaica are prepared to join in an alliance with the law enforcers in the country. And that means they must feel not aggrieved when police come into our community as soldiers, but they must feel relieved and protected by those who are exercising the law. And we want to...
Some nightclub owners in St. James are calling for an early end to the state of a public emergency, saying the early closure of businesses is bad for their pockets. While they generally support the crime control measure, they say the longer it drags on, the more difficult it will be for the tourism sector to recover. TVJ's Giovanni Dennis has more.
Dimming sunlight on a warm afternoon in Montego Bay, symbolic of the dimming earnings for nightclub operators in St. James. For the first 9 days of the state of public emergency, clubs were required to close at midnight, cutting their income. Just ask the owner of Pier 1, a premier nightclub in Montego Bay.
We had a group of young ladies. One was getting married the next day, and they decided to come to Pier 1 to do their bachelorette party and to just kind of have that last night, the last single night out. And they got in at like 11:30, and by 12 they were told to go back. So they must have bad experience for them. It's not what they bought into when they decided to come to Jamaica. And generally you'll find that they'll post it up on their Instagrams or social media.
It's experiences like those that Mr. Russell wants Jamaica to avoid, and he's calling on the authorities to fast-track efforts to restore normalcy.
I hope it goes no further than this. I hope it's a one weekend thing, and by Monday morning we can have the travel agents and everybody, on the same page that, look, this thing is over. It's business as usual. Get the tourists back out on the strip, get them back in the clubs and the bars.
For Director of Margaritaville Caribbean, Winston Dare, he says the authorities may need more than just a week or two.
We think that a 60-day period we could live with.
While supporting the state of emergency, Mr. Dare says regulations should be relaxed for Montego Bay's premier nightclubs.
Our income base is a late night activity, and it's not only tourism but certainly locals as well. We would like to see that within the shortest period of time that we gradually extend the hours for clubs.
The party don't get started till after 12. Everybody know you come out and from 11 onward, and we're being told that we have to be closed by 12, which is fine for 2 weeks. It's fine for locals to say, okay, stay home, we're going to try and sort this problem out. But it's not fine for a traveler that is here for a couple of days.
Under the proclamation, the current state of emergency can last for a minimum of 14 days, up to 3 months. Giovanni Dennis, TVJ News.
And amidst the complaints from some business operators, the police have revised the closing hours for businesses in St. James. Clubs and fast food restaurants can now close at 2 a.m., bars 10 p.m., service stations 11 p.m., and supermarkets, grocery shops and stores can now close at 8 p.m. Persons are reminded to stick to the new closing hours and to cooperate fully with the security forces. So how long will the state of emergency last in St. James? This evening there's another response from the Prime Minister as he reiterated a zero-tolerance approach to the facilitators of crime. Andrew Holness gave an update last night at the St. James chapter of the Lay Magistrates Association of Jamaica. Under the first phase of the state of public emergency, Prime Minister Andrew Holness said the security forces focused on street-level crime, and now, under phase 2, emphasis is on the facilitators. For example, those who help the criminals do the country's banking, telecommunications, and other formal systems.
That AK-47 was not made in Jamaica. It is highly likely that it came in through our ports, which means that either an officer of the government was neglectful in detecting it, or turned a blind eye, or actively facilitated its way through our ports.
So what's fueling some of the crimes?
Much of it is who stole whose money. And for the crime to be profitable, you have to be able to get the cash that represents the profit, which means that somebody has to either change your US dollars, lodge the money for you, facilitate some illegal transaction, accepting payments over $1 million when you know the law says that any transaction over that in cash is illegal, but people still do it.
The Prime Minister is again urging citizens to join the crime-fighting effort and tell the police what they know.
People ask me, so how long will the state of emergency last? And my answer is that we won't give away our strategic intent. We have planned to use all the powers we have for as long as is necessary to bring this problem to heel.
The The Police Service Commission, PSC, will this week begin its search for a new head for the Jamaica Constabulary Force, JCF. This follows the decision by Police Commissioner George Quayle to go on pre-retirement leave on Wednesday. In a release yesterday, the PSC thanked Mr. Quayle for his service. It says it will be in a position to complete its consultation and make a recommendation to the Governor General for a new appointment of a police commissioner within the next few weeks. TVJ News understands the PSC will meet tomorrow with Deputy Commissioner Clifford Blake, who is likely to act as commissioner. A curfew remains in effect for Augustown St. Andrew until 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. The curfew runs north from the intersection of Golding Road with Manley Avenue to Bedward Gardens. Areas close to the Hope Riverbed in Augustown are also included. During the curfew, all persons within the boundaries should remain within their premises unless authorized by the ground commander. On Friday night, 7 persons were shot, 4 fatally, at a bar in Hermitage. The police believe the incident is linked to a gang feud. Scores of people attended the farewell service yesterday for longtime journalist Janice Budd at the Swallowfield Chapel in St. Andrew. TVJ's Krista Campbell reports.
Janice Budd, the consummate communicator, a storyteller like no other. Her final story, perhaps, being told by those who knew her well, former colleagues, friends, and family.
Well, she was a very, very affable person, very bubbly. Her personality was out of this world. In terms of work ethics, one of the best I've seen.
She was a phenomenal documentary writer. She made you feel every word. And her voice, when she brought it to life, if she wrote it well, she said it better. There is no one who could deliver the news with such grace, and her pronunciation, her delivery was just flawless. And it made even a child understand what she was saying. She should be missed, and it's a friendship that will never die. Even though she's gone, I know she'll be starting the press association in heaven.
At her farewell service on Saturday, January 27, 2018, she was remembered with words as glowing as the pleasant demeanor and voice for which she was known in media for over 2 decades, and later in public communications for the National Commercial Bank and the Shipping Association of Jamaica.
Up to Janice's final hours. Other persons in much better health than she was during the last year recount stories of Janice reaching out via telephone or WhatsApp to check on them and to encourage them in their work and personal lives.
Someone once asked Jan if she questioned God about why she was allowed to suffer from this disease. She responded, "No, I asked him what he wanted me to learn from this experience." She would declare on a daily basis that God was intentional and that it was all for his glory.
But it was Janice Budd's personal attributes which resonated most with those who moved tributes for her. Attributes they concur made her of a rare kind. Janice Budd, June 11, 1968 to January 2, 2018. Krista Campbell, TVJ News.